I had a coach from an old boss who told me not to wear red lipstick because I looked like a baboon's ass. Like,
that's a direct quote. That's a real quote from a coach.
That is a direct quote. And then she slid a printed out picture of a baboon's ass across the table.
What went through your mind when you saw that?
I was like, oh, is this the world?
All right, that is my guest today, Steph Pennell. This is going to be an amazing episode. Steph is a former marketing leader turned event specialist. Events are her thing. Today, she runs her own business called the Event Critic, where she builds these insane events for high-growth startups, for scale-ups, for purpose-driven brands. If you are new here, and this is your first episode, I'm Andrew. And in this show, I have incredible, candid conversations with amazing guests like Steph to explore some of the toughest moments that they've encountered along the way in their careers. And that's what we got into. She shared probably the craziest story that I've heard since I started the show. You just saw a preview for it in the intro. I'm not going to recap it. I cannot do it justice. You should listen to her version of it in this episode. She also talked about getting tough feedback, specifically about her personality and some of her delivery at times and how she's worked through that. She talked about some of the toughest feedback that she's had to give to somebody else. So we talked about all these challenging moments, but personally, my favorite part about hearing her story was learning about the role that mindfulness, spirituality, manifestation play in her life, how they've impacted her professional journey, kind of helped her process some of these tough, weird, challenging moments. All right, that is enough from me. Let's jump in and hear her story.
I grew up in Maine in a small town called Saco. If you know of Saco, it's probably because you've like floated down the Saco River or been to the really fun town, which is an amusement park. And I grew up there, quiet, small town, like pretty close to the beach. River was in my backyard.
And growing up there, do you like that? So for folks listening to this that aren't from this area, I've actually never done this, but Saco River is like an infamous like rite of passage. I feel like for like teens, late teens, people in their early 20s, like it's like a float down the river booze cruise type of a vibe. And so being from there, do you like that? Or is it one of those things where you're like, fucking tourists?
The only time I did it was on a school trip, and I'll probably never do it again.
Okay.
I'm like the epitome of not a Mainer.
Here's what I'm curious about. So you go on to, you're just sharing your like integrated health journey over the last few years. You're known for event marketing. I want to bridge the gap between how you grow up and how you get here.
When I was very young, I like barely spoke. Like I was so shy. And I was still pretty quiet all the way up until I started working at a beach bar in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. You could not be shy there, right? Like I remember the Hawk sisters. It was these 3 sisters who were amazing. They took me under their wing. And like, I remember this one specific story. And this is, it feels like so small of a story, but it's like one of those pivotal memories where I was like, oh shit, I started like coming out of my shell. This couple or man had not left me a tip for like a massive check. And one of the Hawk sisters was like, you're going to go after them, right? I was like, what do you mean? I'm not going to go after them. And they're like, no, and grabbed my arm. And we ran out of the bar down the street after them. And like, basically it was like, yo, give me my money. A year before that, maybe even 6 months, would have never done that, like ever. I was outgoing in my safe spaces, but in public, God forbid. No, absolutely not. So I also think like if anyone's listening and has heard me talk about like hiring in an events role, I always look for people with hospitality industry, specifically like bar, restaurant, front of house, like because you're fast paced, you're gritty, you can entertain, like it's all like very transferable skills. So I think like that kind of spending so much time in the restaurant industry was a big like connector of how I got where I am.
And how does that particular story end? Did the guy give you a tip?
I honestly can't remember.
Must have not been a big one if he did.
Yeah, I guess that's not even what's memorable to me. It's just that I like put myself out there. You know what I mean? Stood up for myself. Yeah, he probably didn't.
And so what did you think you were going to do for a career? So we're talking about when you're younger, kind of what you're into, working in hospitality. What did you think you were going to grow up and become?
So I finished my degree in Maine at the University of Southern Maine. And I majored in media studies and communications and then minored in women's studies. And so I came out of it having like random editing skills and like random facts about women's history, which those are still very useful to this day, and was a pretty good communicator. So I had no idea what I was going to do. And I had wanted to go to hair school. I'd wanted to do hair and cosmetology. I get my degree and I'm bartending still, and I become an apprentice at a salon. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it now. So didn't work out. I was like, I don't like it here. And then I just felt like a natural pivot was marketing. And that's kind of where I ended up getting into where I am now.
I feel like it's a good thing you got the salon experience out of your system at a young age. Because I feel like there's a lot of people who like glorify, well, someday I'll just, for me, it's always the coffee shop or maybe like a woodworking business. I'm like, well, someday I'll quit and I'll go do that and life will be so easy. I don't know why the grass is always greener, but it always is. And so it's nice that you got that out of your system where it was like, well, I tried this thing that I thought would be great. It wasn't so great. Now I'm going to go do something else.
It's funny because my little sister is now in cosmetology school. It like really came full circle. Like, I'm going to be all set. I'm set for life. She'll dye my gray hair until I die.
And so he said, so I take this step into marketing, into tech. Is there some moment in your journey where you're kind of realizing that maybe you're in the right place?
So it actually wasn't tech. I got this job at an accounting firm, a CPA, and I was their marketing person. And I had a mentor who like was kind of their agency at the time. And I kind of just did a little bit of everything, like social, website updates, hosting little conferences in the office, networking events. And then I would also help process returns. So that was actually step one. Then I did a very similar thing, but at an insurance agency. And fun fact, maybe 6 people know this about me. I passed the test. So I was actually able to write insurance as well. So I was doing their marketing and
selling a little insurance on the side.
Yeah, insurance policies for people. Then this is the move that like brought me closer. I ended up leaving that job and working for a company called Pierce Promotions, which was a sister company to Omnicom. And there I was doing only experiential marketing for B2C brands. So that's like one part of the story. I didn't get into tech until after that, actually.
This episode is presented by Navattic. If you've been following me or you're a fan of this show, you know how bullish I am on the interactive demo space and how much I love the Navattic team. Done a ton of stuff with them over the years, and they just dropped a bunch of new features that are really exciting. First, they've got a new template library. You can choose from a bunch of pre-made templates that have the most common demo use cases and all of the best practices built in, help you go 0 to 1 in a few seconds. If you're not sure what to build, they also have a new AI storyboard generator. It's exactly how it sounds. You drop in a website URL or some copy or a landing page, whatever you've got, it reads the information, pulls out the key sections, and then builds a working product demo for you in a couple minutes. And after you've built your demo, you're gonna probably want to use your data as part of your go-to-market approach. They've got a bunch of plug-and-play demo playbooks where you can send that interaction data to your CRM. You can use it to trigger alerts, all kinds of good stuff. It's actually a bunch of the things that my team built manually. It took us forever when I was in-house, so I love this. And after you've built your demo, if you need to make any adjustments, if you're displaying numbers or data as part of that, they have a new table AI feature, which helps you to clean up that data in a more conversational way and at scale in just a few seconds. They have made it so stinking easy to use your product as your marketing tool without needing an engineer or heavy design work. You can get started with all of this in their free plan. Check it out at navattic.com/value to get started. That's navattic.com/value. This episode of the show is presented by Appcues. If you work in product-led growth, you know how important activating and engaging new accounts is. Turning those new accounts into active users is critical to your success in a product-led environment, and it's typically why activated accounts is a North Star metric for many growth teams. Certainly why my team spent years working on our onboarding experience when I was in-house, both at Wistia and at Postscript. And that's why I'm so excited that they're sponsoring the show. They are just as passionate about helping the product-led community and companies fix their onboarding and retention as I am. They are the leading product onboarding and adoption platform for both web and for mobile apps, and they've created tons of resources to help this community. They've got the Product Adoption Academy, which is where you can get a free masterclass, like think courses, templates, examples, all the good stuff to help you break through your current plateaus and level up your product chops. I've got a course in there. It's my Value First onboarding course where I share the exact playbooks that my team used to help us onboard hundreds of thousands of new users. You can check out my course at appcues.com/value. That's appcues.com/value. And you can follow that link and explore all the different programs they've got inside of the Product Adoption Academy. But so when you're at Pierce, is that kind of where you fall in love with events and with marketing and kind of set you on your current path?
Yeah, I think so. It was a grind. The people were terrible. Like my peers were great. The people running that company, I don't mind saying this on here, that like they were terrible, really put us through the ringer. And there is part of me that's grateful because everything you do in life like shapes who you are today. And because of that experience, I do set a high standard for myself or anyone who works for me and or my clients, right? Especially now that I'm client facing again, not in-house. And so it's interesting, but we also did some really cool stuff. Like we created a 2-story VIP lounge for Kleenex out of shipping containers at Governor's Ball in New York City. Like they were launching their wet wipes. They had not launched wet wipes yet back then. And so, you know, at concerts, everyone puts on like paint and all that stuff and gets sweaty. And so we actually mocked up and created shower heads and sinks that had the wipes coming out of them. So people could come in, like touch up and then use like the makeup and stuff. And, you know, it was that part of it. I was like, ooh, I like creating experiences and I like seeing people in my experience, like the outcome.
And so has events always treated you well? I'm asking this for a specific reason, which is a lot of times I'll chat with people either on the show or in my coaching practice or just out for coffee or whatever. And I'll talk to folks who they reach some level of like mastery. And then they get to this point where they just kind of hate it or like they lose their love for it, or it becomes more business than the creative side that they sort of fell in love with. Do you have a moment like that?
Yeah, I did at my last company. And in that moment, I was like, wow, I think it's events. I think events are the problem. This isn't for me anymore. And I've been one lucky son of a bitch. Like, because of all those scenarios that I just explained, like, if there's one thing I'm good at, it's like that scrappy mentality. And like, if something's broken, I can fix it with an event. Like, you will not get past me. And I do know that. Like, that is ingrained in me. Like, if someone just like takes the leash off and lets me do my thing, there will be no problems. Knock on wood. Jesus Christ, I better knock on some wood. But yeah, in that role at you know, Zoom Info, because everyone can look at my LinkedIn and just see where I was anyway, like it wasn't a company that really put a lot of emphasis on events. It wasn't in the culture. And they're a beast. They didn't really need them. You know what I mean? So it was like more of a nice to have. Whereas one of my clients now is, I would almost go as far as to say, is an event-led growth company. And so not only was like the work I was doing and my team kind of undervalued, but my values were being undermined as well. And so it wasn't events that was the problem. It was my environment. And honestly, when I quit that job and was like, I'm just going to go like consult and contract work for events, like, and figure it out, because I really didn't have that great of a plan. I was like, if I hate it still, then I'll just stop and do something else. Not a big deal. But I like it again. What I don't like now is the admin work, because I do it for myself. And so, but it's just, that's always going to be how life is. Like, there's never going to be one thing that's going to fulfill you. And like, that took a long time for me to learn. So like, when I'm not getting as much creativity out of my day-to-day, like with my events business, I find it elsewhere. I lean in on all the like health and wellness stuff that I love. I listen to podcasts. I do all these crazy workshops around manifestation. Like, and that stuff kind of piques that same like part of my brain that I need to fill.
You said something like, I felt like my values were not in alignment with my job or something like that. How did that feel for you? Like, how did you know that?
Oh my God. It feels like you're doing everything you can and everybody is still looking at you like, what the fuck are you doing? Right? Like, you're doing everything you can, you're doing everything right, but inside you're just like crushed. So the way I have worked on this for myself and with a coach and through one of these many workshops I do, because I geek out on this shit, is you identify that authentic code or your authentic code or your core values, whatever you want to call it. And they're so key because it basically becomes the map for your life. And when those three things are out of alignment with anything that you're doing in life, if you're making decisions that don't align to those, if you're in a job that don't align to those, if you're in a relationship that doesn't align to those, you are never going to find like that contentment and that abundance in life that we are all privy to, that we all should have the experience of having. And I was on a call with my coach. Her name was Elizabeth, provided by Zoom Info, actually. This is so great. And I was like, hey, so I've been doing this manifestation workshop and it was talking about authentic code. And I'd like love to talk about this with you. And so we go through it and she like helps me really nail down my three. And I'm like, yes, wow, this is it. And then weeks go by. I'm like really struggling at the company and in the role. And she's like, so I want to look back at your authentic code. She's like, let's go through each one. Do you feel like you're getting these things from this current role or like other areas of your life? Because at this point I was using her outside of the company. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. All of these things are just absolutely crushing my core values. And so there's no way I could ever live in alignment, whether I loved events or not, in that scenario, because I wasn't even respecting who I'd identified myself as, because I was letting my like situational surroundings crush it all.
It's really interesting because there's so many people, they know something's off, but they can't articulate it. And sometimes it like sounds different ways, or they'll say, well, I miss the way it used to be, or like, maybe it's me, or I don't really know what it is. Maybe I'll stick it out. Maybe it'll get better down the road. But you had basically your own rubric or like your algorithm you could kind of compare your life to. And it was very easy to see that like if you were to grade an employee or to grade a potential interviewee or whatever, you know, it'd be like 5 exceeds expectations. 1 does not even, it was like very clear. It was a 1 for you across the 3 things that were most important. But it's cool that you had that map.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest things people can like self-identification of who you are. Like, I think that's one of the biggest things you can do for yourself, because when you're in a situation like that, you can look at that, you know, your core values or authentic code. And you can also, to your point, like, oh, maybe I'll just stick around and see if it gets better. I was listening to a Mel Robbins podcast the other day, and she was talking with her daughter. And in this situation, the daughter was like, I've just been really depressed and like, I don't know how to get back to happy. And she's like, I think you do. Like, what are some times in your life that you were happy? And it's like, just go back and think of those things. And like, you might say like things that aren't necessarily attainable now, but when you actually drill down to what those things are that you're saying, like, oh, I miss being around my friends all the time at school. So you miss connecting with other people who bring you up. Those are actually the things you should care about and then make time for. And so when you're in a situation like I was in, like, if you can't find those things in the situation, then that's when you find your way out.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the show. If you are, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. The data shows something like 40% of the people who listen to the show are actually subscribed. It is the best way for you to support the show, and it helps the algorithm find other listeners who are just like you. If you're feeling generous, a quick rating or review makes a huge difference as well. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. Now let's get back to this episode. So it's not that I'm not happy in the Mel Robbins example, or in your example, it's not that, you know, I'm broken or like this isn't the place for me. It's very easy. It's like, oh, I may not know what things are most important to me. Maybe I should identify those first. And then when I do have those things, then I can evaluate my life and see if I'm in alignment with those. If I am, maybe I can go find, or if I am, maybe I'm in the right place and something else is going on. If it's not, then it's very easy. It's not me. This is the wrong environment for what I need.
Yeah. And you might not be prioritizing the right things. And it's called like taking inventory of your life. Like in the beginning, when I started talking about all the things that make up like an abundant life, go through. I've done this exercise with my teams before and other women who I've just kind of done little workshops with. Go through and like rate Am I happy in this area? Am I happy in this area? And then you know exactly where you are like, okay, like maybe it's not the job. Maybe it's actually like my finances are shit right now and I need to take control of that. It's usually never just one thing. And it's not always the thing that seems the most obvious either. But it's definitely never you.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It helps you separate your identity from the situation around you.
Yeah.
That's something that's always been a struggle for me. And it actually is something that when I talk to folks and folks who I'm coaching or folks who I'm mentoring, a lot of times I'll have trouble with that, especially around feedback. Sometimes they'll get feedback and they'll take it like so personally, or the feedback becomes their identity. Sometimes maybe they'll get a layoff and that becomes their identity. Have you ever had a moment like that where you've had some feedback or situation that you struggled to not incorporate into too much of your identity?
So much. But it's all like a recurring theme, which is one of like being too much. Whether I was too loud, too direct, which I think directness became a defense mechanism because as a woman in both like the finance industry, the bar industry, and then tech, like times have not always been great. And so like that, like I think I overcorrected, right? I became too harsh and too hard. I was, I think I've been called bitchy and squabbly. I had a coach from an old boss who told me not to wear red lipstick because I looked like a baboon's ass. Like all these things. Oh yeah, the feedback.
That's a direct quote. That's a real quote from a coach?
That is a direct quote. And then she slid a printed out picture of a baboon's ass across the table.
What went through your mind when you saw that?
Oh my God. That was the job right after the bad relationship. I was like, oh, is this the world? What?
Did you continue working with that coach? Did you have another session with them?
I think I had like a few more after that. Yep. And
Jeez.
then I ended up like leaving that job. Thank God. Anyway, but the feedback has always just been around. You're to this, you're to that. Don't do this, don't do that. If I joke like I'm in the boys club, it goes too far. If I, like all that stuff, it's kind of been a little bit of it's been a weird balance. And then like, I also got a bunch around like the highs and lows. And so what I didn't realize up until like 2 years ago, I finally got an ADHD diagnosis. And so that really helped me identify my behavior.
What do you mean the highs and lows? Can you just contextualize a little bit more?
Yeah. So inherently as human beings, we all have our own like rhythms in life. And so the most recent thing I'm geeking out on is called human design. It's basically a discovery tool to like self-identify who you are. And if you think of like Myers-Briggs or something like that, but this takes into astrology into account, some aspects from like Jewish religion, Hindu, like all these things. So it's like all these things compiled into one. And I am not meant to be one of those people that's like, go, 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 go. Like I have highs, meaning I'm like on it and I have these great ideas and then I have to rest. And that's pretty tough in the events industry and the tech industry in general. Yeah. So the feedback came of like a lot of times all kind of encompassing that. But again, it was mostly around just being too much. And really like looking back now, I'm realizing that I wasn't too much and I should have never tried to change who I was because of these comments, because those were tough to hear, because it's not like they were judging my work. They were actually judging me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, but I'm doing the work and the work is really good. And like, of course, there were very valid things that I needed to work on, like metrics and I don't know, deadlines sometimes with events, but that's a tough one. Like all these kinds of things. So I'm not trying to discount the feedback that I've received that was stemmed directly to my performance. But the majority of the ones that I had a hard time hearing were all about how I showed up and who I was. And now I realize that that wasn't my fault. That was everybody fucking else's fault. If like you don't like who I am and I'm not being inherently like mean to you or like aggressive, which the only time I ever was if there was aggression towards me, right? Like that's our defense mechanism as humans to kind of mirror how people are responding to us. Like that wasn't me. That was just, again, like the people I was around, the environment I was in. And that was another like really, really crazy lesson to learn.
How did you get the perspective that you just shared with me? I'm asking for a specific reason, which is this is not the first time in this show that I've heard a story about someone who had feedback about their personality in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes it's people who got feedback on the way that they talked. Especially some women on the show have shared, like with Upspeak, they've gotten feedback, which is like, what the fuck? That's just the way that I talk. Other times maybe on your confidence and how you project yourself. And I feel like those are the things that are really hard to let go of. So I'm really curious how you got to the place that you've gotten to where you've been able to let go of it.
Yeah. So 2 quick things on that. Like, I think like sometimes like there is some validity, right? In types of feedback like this. It's about the delivery of how you get the feedback though. And what place it's coming from. Is it because the person actually wants you to learn and grow and become more successful? Or is it because they just don't like you? That is a big thing to try to differentiate when you get feedback like that. Is this coming from a place of genuine, authentic, I want to help you grow and I don't want to change you, but XYZ, or is it you're just not a right fit for that person? And that's where that is coming from. And so I think like I actually did not have this breakthrough in my brain, maybe like until a couple months ago. And it took a lot of like, just like self-discovery. Like I said, I listen to workshops. I do a lot of work. Like I do the work to understand who I am and why I respond the way I am. If you couldn't guess, like this will be the next thing for me, like in my career, like I am so passionate about it, as passionate as I am about events, but this chapter of what I'm learning and like, this is what can really like help people. And so, yeah, it was like therapy. It was like Mel Robbins' podcast, my manifestation courses, which actually help you unblock the things that you've been through and help you to understand like you are deserving of all the things. Everyone is deserving of anything and everything. It is usually your limited beliefs that are holding you back and your subconscious. Like I've done a lot of like work on my subconscious. I've taken a hard look at the feedback I've received in the comments that have been made to me over the years and kind of said, like, taking inventory, was this because they cared about me or was this because they were an asshole? And then I just started really setting healthy boundaries for myself. But yeah, that was very recent. Like I just turned 37. It's taken me 37 years to finally feel like I kind of A, understand myself, and B, am not ashamed of it.
The coolest part about getting to do this show is that it's allowed me to explore a lot of the things that have happened in my own journey and hear other people's takes and perspectives and mindsets and things like that. So I really appreciate you sharing all that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what these are for, right? These stories.
100%. 100%. So you were given this feedback at some point. What'd you say? They said you were too much? Was that the words that you used?
No, that was like a generalization because it all kind of came back to it. If you want like a very specific one, it was like, you're too direct and also you shouldn't be so nice because it comes off as flirtatious.
What's the context of that type of conversation? Is it like a formal 360 review, like an offhanded hallway comment somewhere in between?
That was like formal feedback. Like if you're too nice, it can be perceived as flirtatious and it causes issues or sends the wrong message. Yeah, I'll pause there.
What goes through your head the days after that?
It was like I oscillated between fuck it and okay, I see the point. Fuck it. Okay, I see the point. And what's crazy is like to also bucket that with like, you're too direct, you should soften your tone. They're very contradicting. So it's kind of like, how do I meet in the middle? I don't know how to do that. And also like part of who I am is like my stupid, silly charm. Like I turn it on. I know I turn it on. Guys, it's a mechanism. It also has gotten me lots of places because what it comes down to is not because I'm trying to flirt with people or like get them to like me. I'm building relationships and I'm doing it authentically as who I am. So I think for a bit, I like took it to heart. And then I'm not going to lie, I went into Zoom Info and I was like, yo, this is who I am. And I did not dull myself. I did not dim myself. And I was very much too much for some people, or it got perceived the wrong way. And I still oscillate between like, was that my fault? And then I think back and like, I think about some of the other stuff that I've learned, along the way. And you can't control how somebody else responds to you. You can only control you. So if they take you being kind and laughing with them and being yourself as flirtatious, or if they take you being direct and succinct in your communication because you have 100 emails on the regular and you're trying to get through them as fast as you can, and like don't have all the time to be like, oh, how was your day? Like, how was your weekend? Then if they think you're being a bitch, that's on them. Have I been a bitch in my life? Yes. Have I flirted in my life? Yes. But it's not like I was doing that at work. And it's all about how the person responds to you. So like I catch myself sometimes too. I'm like, but it's the opposite. Sometimes like, why does this person feel the need to do the small talk? Like you say hi to me on Slack, just tell me what you want. Don't be like, hey, how's it going? How's your morning? And then pause. Like, oh, I know you're not just reaching out to me to talk about that. What do you want?
Right. What's the real question? Yeah.
And so I have to check myself. I'm like, why am I responding to this person like this when they're just trying to be nice and this is how they communicate? And so I think about it on the flip side.
It's hard to know. What I was really interested in is, so you've gotten some feedback on your personality. Is maybe that the right category to put that kind of feedback under?
Personality and delivery, yeah.
Delivery, okay. I think I like delivery,
yeah.
Okay. So have you ever, as a manager, because of this situation that happened, have you ever been in a situation where you've had to give someone else feedback on their delivery? Or have you not because of this experience? I'm just curious how this experience shapes you and who you've become.
Yeah, I have. It was really tough for me. And I think actually when that happened too, we're very close. We're still close. There was just like a harshness there. And it is like a fine line of direct versus like harsh, I guess. I don't know how else to explain it. But I think it was interesting because when I was like, every time I have to give feedback, whether good or bad, I write myself a script in that way. Like it doesn't get always emotional. You want to you owe that to the person you're giving feedback to. You owe them that clarity and that conversation. So I was working on the script and I was like, oh my God, am I being a hypocrite? Like, am I doing to her what was done to me? And it changed the way I, A, thought about my own delivery, and B, talked to her about it. And the conversation switched into more of a, hey, like, I see how you react and respond and communicate with others in this way, just to be aware that can be perceived as XYZ. And there's nothing wrong with you and how you communicate. However, if you want to grow, if you want to build relationships, this is an area you should watch out for. And I use my own examples. And so it's always really enlightening when you have a similar situation, but you're on the other side of it.
Because I feel like when you've been on the receiving end, you see it. In the way that whatever it is you're insecure about in life, you see in other people and you make notice because it's something that you don't like about yourself, or you notice in yourself, or you've paid attention to. And that's why I was interested in that. And what stands out to me is you said you need to really take inventory on the person's motives. Are they trying to chop you down, or are they really trying to lift you up? And because you've been through that experience, it sounds like you checked in with yourself and found a way to make sure that you were lifting them up.
Yeah, always. I try. I mean, I'm not perfect. I was never a perfect manager.
I mean, that's the whole point of the show, right? None of us are perfect. That's it, right. We're all just learning and doing the best that we can. Yeah. So for something like that, without sharing something that would maybe violate that person's trust or their privacy or anything, when you go into a situation like that, where you know you're going to have a tough conversation with someone, you've written out the script. Do you practice it? Actually, as a side note, like, do you rehearse it at all at home in the mirror, or like on Loom or something like that?
Mostly in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have it written down.
Do you go right for it? Or do you make some small talk with me to make sure that I'm comfortable and I'm in the right frame for that conversation?
I came to learn, I don't know if I did it in this specific scenario, but I came to learn hey, are you open to some feedback? Unless it was like a designated meeting for annual or like the 6-month whatever feedback, don't run into a meeting and be like, yo, by the way, you're being super harsh and everyone hates you, which no one ever said that. That was just me being really extreme because I have a flair for the dramatic sometimes. And I even asked that today with friends, any relationship, when they're coming to me for something like, hey, are you looking for me to just listen to you or are you looking for advice? So with like a team member, I'd always be like, are you open to hearing feedback today? Like, where are you at mentally? Like, it's nothing major, but I just want to work through it with you. So I like to like give them that like minute to be like, because you never know what's going on in someone's personal life too. Maybe that's not the day because it will just make things worse.
Hey, if you're enjoying the stories on this show and feeling like you're ready to tackle some of your own hurdles, I'm here to help. If you didn't know already, I offer one-to-one coaching specifically for people who work on or around growth teams who want to have a bigger influence and impact in their roles. Maybe you're navigating some tough moments, whether it's managing your team or handling feedback. Maybe you just want to step into a bigger leadership role. Or maybe you're at a unicorn company today and you want to make sure that the company doesn't outgrow your skill set. Either way, I can help. If you're interested in learning a little bit more, head to deliveringvalue.co/coaching to learn a little bit more and set up a call with me to see if we jive. All right, enough from me. Back to the episode. And so you talked about, making mistakes as a manager and not being perfect. I'm curious if there are other times where you felt like you made another manager faux pas and what that might be.
I think one of the things that I've learned is it's a very fine line of friendship versus being a boss versus having people like you in the workplace. Like, I lead with building strong relationships, and that line can get crossed very easily. And I feel like one of my manager faux pas over the years has been, and again, I don't regret it because I'm still friends with these women, like all the women who like would fall into this category. Like, we got a little too close probably, but did they ever disrespect me or not do the work because of it? They didn't, but I think I got lucky. Like, I think that is something that you have to be careful about. But yeah, I guess I don't regret it. But I think if you were asking someone who is like, I don't know, a master of leadership, they'd probably be like, yeah, no, that was a faux pas.
I think this is one of the hardest things, especially if you're like a new manager, and especially if you're on the team and then all of a sudden you get a promotion and now you're like managing people on the team that you used to be peers with, but now you're their boss. Yeah. And like, you're supposed to go from talking shit about the boss to being the boss. Like, it's just such a weird transition to make. Yeah. And I think I've never met someone who doesn't say I'm a people pleaser. Like, I have yet to meet that person. I certainly identify as a people pleaser. How does somebody navigate this? Like, it's a hard thing, especially as a new manager. It sounds like you've made some mistakes and you've kind of worked through some of that. But what's some advice that you'd give someone who's new manager, new team lead, trying to find the right distance to sort of keep between themselves and their directs?
Yeah, I think the key thing is just finding things you can connect on that don't necessarily relate to work without making that the full story of your relationship. One thing that I would say is structure is probably like a very key thing to do. So, and what I mean by structure is like have those one-on-ones and have that agenda ready and have your set expectations and keep that clear communication open. And if you happen, like, events is such a weird thing to like talk about in this sense because you are literally on the road with this person a lot too. So it's like you just get close because you are literally like, you wake up, you go to the event at 6 a.m. and then you're together all the way through dinner and then you do it again the next day. So it's like keeping space while still rewarding them. I think I had a boss who did really well, like really good at this, and it was structured. And there were moments where like he would, come to dinner with all of us and let loose and whatever. And then it was back to business, but it wasn't like a constant thing. Like, you are allowed to show who you are and allow them to show you who they are without making that the core purpose of your relationship. I guess that's not really an answer because I can't tell you how to do that, but good luck and let me know if you figure it out.
Let me give a statement. Tell me if you agree or not, because I feel like I'm projecting maybe a little bit here. As a manager and as a leader, do you believe that you need to keep a certain amount of emotional distance between you and your team? This is like a debate I've had in my head that I don't know if I can answer in a one word. I'm curious to hear your take on it.
The first answer that came to my head was no, because we're humans. Like, you want them to see that you're human, and you want to see that they're humans. They're not just like a head on the other side of the screen, or, someone who wakes up and just slacks you all day. You know what I mean? Like, you're human. So like my gut answer is no, but there is that level of transparency and openness that you have to define for yourself. And that's what you need to define for you as a leader, and what you want from a leader too. Like, I've had some really great transparent leaders, but they also, when it was something I wasn't allowed to be privy to, like, they were good about saying, I know this is stressful, but I won't have that information for you right now. But I think it's a personal choice. I think some of the great leaders out there that I've had have led with empathy and have shown that they're human.
What's something that you wish more leaders were honest about?
How hard it is. Stop acting like you're so good at it and okay with everything. You're not. And if you aren't, you don't care. Like, it is hard. It's okay to say it's hard. It's okay to say you screwed up. Like, the amount of leaders I've seen who dictate instead of coach. Don't lead if you can't coach. And don't lead if you don't want to coach. Because that's what you're actually there for. You are meant to help get that person to the next stage of their career. First for me. Secondary is you're like the company, right? Like, yeah, but the company's not going to show up at your funeral if you all of a sudden die. You're absolutely replaceable. And so is the person you that's reporting to you, or the people. But what's not replaceable is the value that they can get from your mentorship while you're their manager. So I think managers should be more vocal about, A, it's hard and that's okay to talk about, and B, like, be more vocal about how you should learn to be a better coach and not just a dictator or someone who isn't thinking about the future for that person or themselves.
Throughout our conversation today, you've talked a lot about mindfulness and manifestation and human design. I'm curious if there's a specific either approach or ritual or habit that's had the biggest impact on your professional, personal journey.
Yeah, I actually think, oh my God, there's so many. So many. I would say, if I had to just say two things, I would say the manifestation courses have been great for me, because it's not, when people say manifestation, a lot of times people think like you're writing down what you want, and like, I want a 6-foot, blue eyes, blonde hair, finance, trust fund, whatever, right? Like, which isn't that a song?
I think it was like a TikTok song, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh gosh.
But I have that journal for what it's worth. Like, I have a manifestation journal. It's on my desk. I could hold it. So I have that. So you're saying it's not that, it's.
So I do this program called To Be Magnetic. And the way they talk about it is they break it down by stages. And it's actually quite scientific, but a lot of it has to do with your subconscious limiting beliefs. And so when you're born authentically yourself, but then you are quote unquote trained or put in these situations to believe other things throughout your life. And your examples that are around you are often what you believe is all that you'll be capable of too. And so they go into talk about how you have to release those limiting beliefs. And also authentic code is a big piece of it. That's like number one for them. Like, you have to know your core values and who you are authentically. Releasing those limiting beliefs, unblocking anything that has you feeling those limited beliefs that also often goes back to childhood, identifying those things and working through them. And then my favorite piece of their manifestation practice is what they call expanders. And so expanders are basically examples in your life of, oh, see, that's achievable. That person has it. And they don't have to be someone you know. They don't even have to be a real person. They can be a character in a book or a TV show. And say like, okay, like that person is my expander because they've done this thing. And what's crazy is like one of my expanders is Mel Robbins. And as you start to like do all this work and tell the universe that you are worthy, you believe you are worthy of these things, your orbit will bring you closer and closer to your expanders. So the other day I walked into Pilates. Mel Robbins was in my Pilates studio.
I was going to ask if you had ever met her because you've mentioned her a few times and she lives locally. So so keep going.
Yeah, I did not meet her, but we have the same Pilates instructor. So she walked by. I was actually listening to her podcast and my instructor was like, yeah, do you know Mel Robbins? She was just in that class and every time she comes, it's so funny. And I was like, shut up. So that's like a big one for me. I really believe in that practice, but it's not just because I'm writing down the things I want. I'm actually believing that I deserve them. That's the best part about it. And then the second is human design, which this I only discovered like a month ago. But of all the things we've been talking about and all the stuff that I've said I've listened to and read and the practices I've done, it's actually like a blueprint of who I am. And it made me feel for the first time that I am okay who I am and how I work and how I interact with people and how I engage and how I show up every day. And that was huge for me because it's hard. We're as humans, we always are comparing ourselves to those around us. And I think in the very beginning, I was talking about how I was like, who am I? Why am I different? And how do I figure it out? Like it kind of came full circle by doing that and understanding that. So I think 37 is the year that I am like really rooted in who I am.
Anything that you haven't said that you want to say directly to the listeners of the show?
I would say if something feels off, or there's something you've been wanting to do, try to get rid of those limiting beliefs or do the discovery and do the work, figure it out. If you want to start that new career or start that company, what's holding you back? If it's finances or family, figure out how you can fill that desire with maybe something another smaller way. Or just get rid of the limiting beliefs because the second, and I can tell you because I'm living it right now, the second you live in your authentic self and are bringing in and doing the things that you actually enjoy, the things that maybe you thought you'd never get paid for, you'll get paid for them. And even if you don't, you'll get paid in another way and still have this very fulfilling, abundant life.
I love that. I'm on this journey with this show. This is part of it for me. I get to meet all these amazing people, get paid a little bit along the way, and hopefully more of that to come. So thank you for coming on and sharing your journey and a few of the speed bumps. For folks who are listening to this that want to work with you, how should they get a hold of you? Where should we send them?
LinkedIn. Yeah, my LinkedIn, the Event Critic.
Cool. We'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.